Going to have a look at the papers now with Dipti. Australian submarines once again in the spotlight. Donald Trump lashing out at the former Australian Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. What's this about, Dipti?
Well, you know, Malcolm Turnbull was, of course, Prime Minister in 2016 when Australia announced a deal to initially order submarines from France. Now, 5 years later in 2021, you'll remember that the government spectacularly reneged on this deal and said it will be ordering from the US instead as part of an alliance that Australia had formed with the US and the UK called AUKUS. Now, in an interview with The Guardian last week, Malcolm Turnbull said that America is it's a very different picture today looking at America, and that it is, quote, a much less dependable ally under President Trump, and that Australia faces the real possibility that it may never get those submarines at all. Well, so this is the article from last week. Donald Trump, in return, retaliated on X, saying that Malcolm Turnbull was a weak and ineffective leader who led Australia from behind. Malcolm Turnbull, for his part, once again doubled down on those comments in this article that was published earlier this week on Tuesday. He decried Australia's timid approach to the US and said it should not continue this, quote, bipartisan gaslighting.
Yeah, it all comes as well, doesn't it, Dipti, among anger from the current Australian government over US tariffs as well.
Yeah, and that's what's playing out on the Sydney Morning Herald's front page today. This is the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald here. The current Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese lashed out at the US after the Trump administration decided not to exempt Australia, as had been hoped, from those 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium exports to the US. Now, as I said, it sparked a lot of anger from the current Australian government, who called this decision unjustified and very harsh. And if you look inside the pages of the Sydney Morning Herald today, there's a lot of coverage now. The Herald correspondent Matthew Knott in this article here says that this decision not to grant an exemption to Australia shows that Australia's once special relationship with the US is over, and that the future of the alliance will be defined not by trust, but by transaction. Now, former high-ranking members of the Australian military, retired Admiral Chris Barry here, in this article written by Matthew Knott, is quoted as saying that Australia now needs a plan B. And what's interesting is in the pages of The Guardian, another submarine expert, Peter Briggs, an Australian submarine expert, also makes a call for a plan B, and he even makes a suggestion that's quite wild, possibly going back to a French contract. Now, in the pages of the French papers, Le Figaro notably says, rather smugly in this article, it looks at how Australia could, in the end, find itself without any submarines at all.
We shall see how that develops, Dipti. No Domain is immune, of course, from Donald Trump's politics. Even the Sundance Film Festival. Tell us more.
Yeah, the Sundance Film Festival will have a new home from 2027, and the decision of who will host it will be made by the end of this April. Now, the entertainment website Deadline says that the festival has been hosted in Sundance in the state of Utah for the past 40 years. That's a mountain resort town. It's facing competition now from other states like Colorado and Ohio. Now, Utah was hoping to really bank on its goodwill as the host of the festival for the past 4 decades by putting a bid forward for a Salt Lake City, Park City bid to host the Sundance Festival. Now, the problem is a new state bill in Utah to ban the rainbow flag, the LGBTQ plus flag, from schools and state government buildings could be a major hurdle to those ambitions. As Deadline says, it also puts it at odds with the festival's inclusive and diverse ethos story.
Now, here in France, this next story, Le Parisien today reveals a spying scandal. It's actually within the finance ministry, this.
That's right. It's on the front of Le Parisien newspaper today, and what it calls a mole, an Algerian mole at Bercy, the home of the French finance ministry. A civil servant is accused of having delivered information on Algerian opposition members living in France with the help of an Algerian consulate worker. And you can read all about it in Le Parisien. It has sparked some responses from the Algerian press. This is from TSA, an Algerian news website, which calls these accusations rather curious, noting that the arrests of the two men were made last December. So the website's really wondering why all of this is coming to light now. It also says those arrests in December came right after a former terrorist in Algeria revealed that French intelligence had tried to use him to create terror cells in Algeria. So a little bit of controversy there in the Algerian papers.
And finally from Dipti, the Brazilian government, they are clearing out kilometres of Amazon rainforest.
Yeah, it's according to the BBC, Stuart, and it's reported by The Telegraph today. Brazil cutting down thousands of trees in the Amazon rainforest. The reason will shock you, as you can see there. They're building a highway to transport dignitaries later on this year as the city of Belém, the Brazilian city of Belém, prepares to host the COP30 UN climate change conference. Somehow the Brazilian government missed the irony on this one. It doesn't go down well with critics of the conference who say that the conference is all words and no actions, and even when there are actions, they're not the right ones.
That doesn't sound particularly not very good optics, should we say, there in Brazil. Dipti, thank you very much, Dipti, with the papers on France 24 for us.